What am I doing? I'm talking to an empty telephone.
I don't understand.
Because there was a dead man on the other end of this fucking line.
Romantic comedies plus Juno. Now playing Bridget Jones' Diary, Juno, Notting Hill. I'm also just a girl standing in front of a boy, asking him to listen to this podcast. I'm Liam Way, welcome to Corona Cinema, and joining me as always is Matty.
Good afternoon.
And Ross.
Hello.
And Mason.
All right.
And we're going to start with Bridget Jones's Diary from 2001. Bridget Jones is determined to improve herself while she looks for love in a year in which she keeps a personal diary. Directed by Sharon Maguire and co-written by Richard Curtis, Andrew Davis, and Helen Fielding, who also wrote the novel. Starring Renee Zellweger, Colin Firth, and Hugh Grant. And Renee Zellweger, she was nominated for Best Actress at the Oscars for this film. So whoever picked this film, you can go ahead and speak now if you want.
So I picked this film because it's very widely considered to be like one of the great classic rom-coms, I think. And the whole film is, I think, especially relatable to like women who are like 25 plus and single. But it's relatable beyond that. It's relatable beyond that. And it's just something she says like when she's talking about her co-worker and she's slightly senior, thinking she's in charge of me. And that kind of stuff. It's funny. And yeah, the film just kind of revolves around her being so tragic, I guess. And it's actually quite funny, though, because she's not actually that tragic. I mean, she has a good job, she has good friends, and she can afford a nice flat in central London and has two guys fighting over her. So it's not really that tragic. But minus Bridget, I think all of the other characters are quite cliched, like Darcy and Cleaver, but it works in that sense. And I think, yeah, that's what makes the film works. And it's got some really funny scenes in it, like Darcy and Cleaver's fight scene, smashing through windows, and just like they obviously probably never had a fight before. Two quite like middle class guys just going at each other. It's just funny. And yeah, I think during the film you actually get quite invested in Bridget and her love life, and it's just interesting watching her live her life. And of course, Ronnie Zonkwinger is really, really good as Bridget. She's very charming and she's very fun in the role, and I don't think you could picture anyone else to be Bridget Jones, especially as an American woman playing an English woman. She does such a good job. And yeah, the film, I don't think the film's like laugh out loud funny, but it's just very witty dialogue and it's very like chuckly throughout. I don't know how else to explain it, but it's just, yeah, like when her mum's like, his Japanese wife left him on Christmas Eve, cruel race, stuff like that. It's just really funny. And yeah, the film as a whole is just really heartwarming and comforting, and it's why still today so many people love it and become a classic. It's still talked about. And I think I think it's because so many people do relate with Bridget Jones and the way she acts and stuff. And yeah, there's not really too much else to say.
Yeah, I think it's a very watchable film. Like this very light-hearted, not too much heavy stuff. Like she's got there's development going on with her character, but it's not too deep or too intense. And like the narration helps keep that kind of light-hearted feel. Like it's really peppy and very eloquent. Like all the very, like you say, like she's an American doing a Southern English accent, and she pulls it off in that kind of eloquent kind of manner. And it's pretty impressive. Like she's very engaging. She said she's smart, but like kind of goofy at the same time. You think like she gets herself into difficult situations through being a bit goofy, but at the same time you appreciate how smart she is. And she's kind of stuck at this crossroads in life, and you get on board with her struggle. I think for most of the film, like I don't really love this film too much. I thought a lot of it was quite forgettable, but her performance was like definitely the strongest aspect of it and kind of kept me going throughout the film. And I think comparing this to the other time we've talked about her, which was on Judy, which is a really forgettable film, and I can't really remember an awful lot about it. And we probably watched it. That was like 2 months ago, maybe. I think this is probably her most definitive role, I guess. She didn't win the Oscar for this one, but it's probably what she's most known for. Mason, you picked Judy, and we did it at that time. Did you enjoy this performance from her a bit more than that one?
Yeah, it's weird because I haven't actually seen any of the Bridget Jones films before, but I feel like I've seen enough like clips of them and stuff like that to have a grasp of what the character of Bridget Jones is. And yeah, like comparing it to Judy, it's obviously an entirely different it's an entirely different role. But Renee Zellweger, like this is what I feel like I know her for, is being Bridget Jones. So I feel like that's why Judy seems so much more extreme, and potentially maybe why she won, because it is so different. Because I feel like she's just expected to be Bridget Jones rather than kind of any other character, really. But like you said, I think her performance in this is, she just has such a good job at being so relatable, like what Ross said. I mean, besides her, I feel like you said, Leon, the other day, I feel like she looks like my older sister, and I feel like she's probably going through a similar life period as my... No, not my little sister, as my older sister. Yeah, I feel like I can relate to the Bridget Jones character just by watching my older sister's life, kind of in a similar stage, I reckon. Don't know about the two lads fighting over her, but you know, like the similar kind of stage. And having that relatability, and I think her friends, like having the characters of her friends there, they are, like you said, they are a bit theatrical, but you feel like you're kind of sat at the table with them a lot of the time. And I feel like that's what's really effective about this film. You kind of feel like you're one of Bridget's mates, and you're kind of hearing about all what's happening in her love life and this sort of fight with the two guys at the same time that her mate's doing it. It works well. Like I said, it's just very relatable as a film.
I think the vibrant friendship group is like one of the key things in a rom-com. Having these kind of surrounding characters who have a lot of funny one-liners, kind of broad personality traits. Like this one, you've got Sally Phillips, who's the journalist who says fuck like every other sentence. It's like little things to keep, little quirks that keep you interested and makes you remember these characters. And you got Moaning Myrtle as part of the group as well. It's very weird. The first time you're introduced to her, when she's crying because her man broke up with her. It's just really, I find it really disturbing when she cries, because she literally just sounds like Moaning Myrtle in that bathroom, whatever it was, in a Chamber of Secrets. So yeah, I was a bit uncomfortable. And then you have that guy who released a hit song nine years ago, and was like, yeah, that's it, I'm done now. And that one scene when he thinks he's getting interrupted for an autograph by the two old people, and he's like, no, yeah, I get it, okay, I'll give you an autograph. And then they're like, no, your chair's on my wife's coat. That's what I wanted. So yeah, nice having a bit of some fun characters in the background. Matty, was that something you liked about the film? Her friendship group providing a bit of light entertainment.
I was actually going to say what I liked about this film is kind of like how it has not unnecessary characters, but it pads out like that friendship group for the conversations that she needs to have back and forward. It could have just been one character, it could be just a girl best mate, and then that could stimulate the conversation that would progress the plot. But it's nice that they had like 3 or 4 friends for that role, just to make the film feel more fuller. And so like it's not unnecessary that they did that. And the same, they did that at the work. The work could have had just like maybe 1 or 2 like bystanders to the romance between Hugh Grant and Bridget, but instead they actually have lots of different characters, so you can see lots of different reactions. And the same with the family. So it's like there are a lot of moving pieces, and they're all balanced really well. So that is something I do really like about the film. The film's also quite like dated, which is nice, to be fair, because it kind of gives you like early 2000 vibes again, which you don't often see in films anymore, without it being too much. And I think, as Ross has said as well, Bridget being more relatable as a person, like she just sit there and does feel sorry for herself. She'll go through different stages of just using alcohol, then using food, and then using exercise, and goes through. She's not made of stone, really. Like she exhibits emotion, and handles them the way everyone else would handle them. And then Colin Firth in this film is quite funny. He's just so depressed the whole time. Like, just stood there just feeling sorry for himself, and just like just like stooped posture the whole time, just going, yeah, I suppose. So it's interesting that this kind of like helped him take off and then kind of like a staple in lots of films and now become kind of the big brand that like no one can really, he's not in that many films anymore just because no one can really afford him because of like how successful he is. So it's interesting to see how he's developed since then. And then as Ross said, the fight scene as well. I do like that fight scene because these two kind of like people are kind of a bit reserved, and then ended up having this full-on brawl in the street. And then it's almost everyone goes back to childhood. Like when the guy runs into the restaurant, it goes, "Fight! There's a fight!" And then everyone has to run out and go watch the fight. And yeah, that's the main things I really wanted to say about the film. Yeah.
The fight scene is just funny because I just wasn't expecting it. It's just so out of nowhere, and it goes on for like 3 or 4 minutes. I thought that was really effective. It's just being the whole time I'm just sitting there like, what the fuck's going on, in a hilarious kind of way. But I thought that was an instance of Hugh Grant not being too cool in that scene. But I thought this was like his coolest performance. He didn't have like usually. Because I don't really, before I started watching all these films, like this year, I hadn't really seen anything of his other than like, I guess the Gentleman at the start of the year. I hadn't seen any of his romantic films, which he was like renowned for. Like he was like the romance guy of the 90s. And I didn't really understand like why that was until watching like all of these films. But even then, he's kind of a bit like nerdy in like Four Weddings and a Funeral, and even Notting Hill, we're going to talk later, like a bit more like shy, and a bit more like not a bit more vulnerable. Whereas he's properly charismatic. Like he hasn't got that bumbling Englishman kind of quality, which he's kind of known for. He's just cool. He's the boss. He's in charge. He's getting all these women. Like even though he's an arsehole. So that's kind of probably, that says a lot. He's an arsehole, but I thought he was an entertaining arsehole for most of the film. But kind of I just don't really, with this film, I don't really understand the development of like the relationship between Colin Firth and Bridget Jones, like how it goes from him being disgusted by her at the start to having a bit of affection for her. It kind of comes out of nowhere. It doesn't feel like there's any kind of explanation for it. It's just kind of, okay, we're doing this, which is like, yeah, whatever. It's just a like silly rom-com. At the end of the day, it doesn't have to be watertight. But that was kind of the annoying thing for me, how that kind of felt like it just happened real quick, that he was now infatuated by her. And it's kind of typical for the movie, I think. It just didn't, the structure was a bit off. It kind of didn't really know where it was going for a lot of points in it. Like, yeah, and even the dramatic ending with him reading the diary and then rushing out to go buy a new diary is revealed. Like that didn't really, it felt really contrived, like the kind of drama of that, and her rushing out in her knickers in the cold. Like it's interesting. Like it always happens in rom-coms. So you have that final embrace, which is kind of a ridiculous situation. But it didn't. It wasn't cheesy in a good way, I guess. That ending for me. Ross, did you got any thoughts on that, kind of the way the relationship pans out between the two main characters?
I think it's quite a theme among a lot of Richard Curtis films where relationships just kind of happen. I mean, it happens, I think, we'll talk about later on Notting Hill, it kind of happens, and that just kind of happens, and About Time, it just kind of happens. It's a theme among his films, but I think what it does, rather than spending time kind of developing their relationship before being kind of together, or like them kind of falling in love or starting to like each other, whatever, it's kind of just like a instant attraction, instant liking thing, which I think kind of they probably do to move the story along, because otherwise you would have to have another half hour at the start of the film to kind of develop this relationship together, and it kind of skips out that part just so it can get on to the two guys fighting over Bridget, which is, I think, is the main part of the thing. Well, actually physically fighting over her as well. But I think it's the main part of the thing, which is why they might skip over that bit. But I think it does take away a certain amount of depth to the relationship, but not necessarily in a bad way. I think it's not meant to be like a deep film anyway. It's just funny. It's I think it holds its comedy throughout well enough for that not to matter as much.
Ross, I heard Ross say the word attraction there, and kind of reminds me of how this film spoiled Fatal Attraction within the film. It's a bit uncalled for. Imagine had we did that on the podcast not too long ago. Imagine I hadn't seen Fatal Attraction, they just go and spoil it. But I don't really need to do that, to be honest. That's another thing I hold against this film. Fucking Cunts. But I do like that scene when she arrives at a dinner party and she's introduced to all these like generic couples, and it just goes through all of them, like 5 or 6 of them. It's like it's Rebecca and Steve, and Michael and Michael Shaw. It's just the most generic, like white ass couples who are just bland as anything. The kind of people you just wouldn't have any kind of interesting conversations with at a dinner party. I thought that was a funny bit of writing. Also, if this wasn't going to go to Renee Zellweger, we kind of remarked on how it was impressive that an American was able to pull off the English accent, and obviously it was controversial at the time, being that it was based on a book that was quite popular in this country, that they opted to go for an American. But among the people considered, according to Wikipedia, was Rachel Weisz, but apparently she was too beautiful for the role, according to Wikipedia, and I'd agree, to be honest. Don't know whose decision that was, the director or the writer, but yeah. Bit of a slight on Renee Zellweger, but there you go.
I do want to say it was interesting watching Hugh Grant in this role playing a dickhead, because I think in most films that I've seen him, he's a bumbling, lovely British kind of like sweetheart who never does really anything wrong, and just that everything goes wrong for him to usually pity. So it was nice watching him in a film where he's actually being a bit of a dickhead, other than The Gentleman, where he's also a dickhead, and it perfectly acted as well in that. So he's showing a little bit of range between his like 500 rom-coms and then one sleazy one, and then where he plays a cannibal in Kill Out Atlas.
And his role in Paddington 2, which is iconic as well. Okay, let's get some ratings. Start with Ross.
Maybe the story's not so strong, but I think it's funny enough throughout. So I gave it a 7.8.
Mason.
Yeah, I think it's a good film, but it's not amazing. So I gave it a 6.8.
Matty.
Yeah, not quite my cup of tea in terms of films. Like I do like rom-coms, but this one didn't quite slap for me. But I can understand why it is a classic, and why people do keep coming back to it. So I'm giving it a 7.4.
Yeah, I'm a big rom-com guy, so for it to disappoint in my eyes, I feel like it's not really up there for me, so I'll give it a 6.9. Moving on to our second film, which is Juno from 2007, which, as I alluded to in my intro, is probably not really a rom-com, but this is what happens when communication lines break down. Anyway, faced with an unplanned pregnancy, an offbeat young person makes an unusual decision regarding the unborn child. Directed by Jason Reitman and written by Diablo Cody, long-time collaborators, them two. Starring Elliot Page, Jason Bateman, Jennifer Garner, Alison Janney, J.K. Simmons, and Michael Cera. I had to say all of them because that's a really nice cast. Oscar nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actress for Page, and it won for Best Original Screenplay. Whoever picked this, it's not rom-com, but go ahead.
Sorry, I just fucking managed to lose you. Right. Yeah, so this was my pick, not specifically a rom-com. I was trying to put this film into a kind of like a bracket so that we could use it on the podcast. But I think it's just so unique as a film. It's really kind of like difficult to find 2 or 3 other films that would fit into a bracket with it. So I guess a rom-com is the best way to put it in, unless we're going to use a teenage pregnancy category. And what kind of draws me to this film is, as well as it being like quite a moving film about life, and like as it says, like Juno's kind of like upbeat persona throughout this film, kind of like showing how strong she is as a person, getting through something that is really quite traumatic at such a young age. Something that not many people would understand what she's going through, and then everyone she's going to meet is more or less going to look down on her for it. So in that sense, it is a powerful film, but also just the interesting dynamics between the characters. You don't really see, you see lots of rom-coms between a man and a woman, and things are usually perfect, and then there's a few like hiccups along the way, but they always end up together. This film explores much more complicated dynamic relationships, like even just her family. Like it's like she's got her dad, but then she's got a step mum, and then her children. So there's different dynamics there right away. And then the fact that then she's pregnant, and then the fact that she was then exploring giving her child away to a donor family, and that relationship, that's something that's not really seen. You don't really know how to act with that very often. So that's very interesting just to watch play out. And then the reactions between Jennifer Garner and Jason Bateman. Them two characters are very interesting, exploring that dynamic of a family that isn't necessarily happy. And the film taking the south turn and Jason Bateman deciding to leave is quite an unexpected turn. And something that is alluded to by the stepmother, is also one of my favorite characters in this film. I particularly like a little spat against the ultrasound technician. That's probably one of the high points in the film for me, just because it's just a nice little. She's a character that's a little bit underrated, I think, in this film, but really important, and someone shown to be quite strong and loving, as well as not taking really shit from anyone and being very protective, which is nice to see from a film, because usually in films step parents aren't portrayed as very nice people normally, which is a shame, because usually they can be better than the real parents, but we don't really. It's just nice to explore these different avenues, and I think each character fills the role very well. Michael Cera filling his role, I think he's maybe a little bit typecast, but he fits the role perfectly, and there's no one else you could really put in it. Kind of the delicateness that he adds to the role. And J.K. Simmons as well is probably the perfect dad. I like a lot of his work, and he just seems to fill this loving role perfectly. And I think my favorite line in this entire film is when Jennifer Garner's talking about, do you feel like you were ever born to be something or to do something? And she's obviously talking about being a mother, and he replies, yes, I know exactly what you mean, and says he was born to do heatings and electrics. It's just kind of like the perfect, you can just see they're not on the same wavelengths. But this film, it does have lots of just quaint and nice little interactions, and I think it's perfectly balanced. Even the soundtrack complements this really nicely. And I think it would just be a big shame if we didn't include it on the podcast. So that's why I kind of squeezed it by in the RomCom week, because I don't really know when we'd be able to fit it on again.
Yeah, imagine this is probably like an important film for women who've gone through this kind of thing, in terms of showing like when you fall pregnant at that age, like the confusion, the worry, like people, like kids at school judge you, like when those shots of like her walking through the like corridors, and everyone's like, oh my God, especially when she gets the baby bump, and like that feeling when she kind of like hates herself a bit, she feels like it's like she's gone wrong, made a mistake, that kind of thing. And then showing how you can like come out the other side, and you're like the relationship between her and what's his name, Bleeker is like, it's kind of stronger after that experience of going through that pregnancy and then giving up the child and all that. So that kind of strengthens that relationship. So it shows you can still, doesn't have to ruin your life, and you don't necessarily, even if you don't end up keeping the child or doing anything else with it, like you can kind of come out still in a good place. It kind of humanizes people like this, rather than them just being like a dumb kid who's just like, you're just a promiscuous kid who fucked up, and now you've got yourself in this mess. So you're just another dumb kid. You don't really have any kind of agency. It actually makes her an interesting character. May touched on it, like her performance kind of adds to that as well, in terms of kind of that. She's very sharp and funny and self-deprecating, and she kind of uses the humor to conceal her emotions at certain points. Like she kind of bats away when she feel like she might get a bit too emotional. Like she kind of bats it away using the humor. So when the emotion does come out, it's more like effective. Like when Bleeker calls her beautiful, and she's genuine. You can see she's like genuinely touched by that. She wasn't expecting that. She's kind of like, oh, Bleeker. I feel like those moments are more effective because of the way she kind of withholds in other moments. Then obviously you have that really powerful scene when she's is it just after she finds out the couple's getting divorced, and she pulls over in the car on the side of the road, and it's kind of like a meltdown in the car, just all the frustrations coming out. So yeah, really a strong performance to add to the interesting themes in this film. Mason, did you think it was a very deeply personal and kind of sad but funny film at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, besides this film not being a rom-com, I think that's what I enjoy the most about it, is the way that it kind of tackles, like you said, a different approach of like teenage pregnancy. Like you said, instead of just, I don't know, having the story of her having an abortion or I think you would just probably expect her to keep it in the end because that's kind of like a nicer story and probably promotes this idea of, that's what you should do if you have like a teenage pregnancy. But going down this route of, like someone trying to adopt the baby and then kind of making it humorous to where it doesn't feel too deep. Like I don't feel like I was watching this and I was like, oh my days, like this is too much. Like I'm here for a rom-com, supposedly. But instead having it where it's having that humor with this storyline works. Like the character Leah works well because she brings humor to a lot of the scenes. Like the scene when they're trying to pick out like the new parents for the kid, it's just funny, like the way they're just like scrolling through like this newspaper, like the back of a newspaper, like circling with these families, and she's like, I don't want to be picky, but they need to be this, they need to be that, they need to be that. Like, yeah, I don't know, it works really well at touching on this subject that I mean I haven't seen a film before where there's a teenage pregnancy and she actually gives up the kid to this family at the end. So yeah, it touches on those issues really well, and especially it touches on Juno's sort of struggle to believe that like love is real in that sense, because she talks to her dad, doesn't she, about how she's like, oh, please just tell me that like people can be together and can be happy and stuff like that, because she's seeing the breakdown of the two people who want to adopt the kid, like their relationship. So yeah, I think that's really effective as well in showing how she's a kid from arguably like a broken home originally, where her parents are broken up, to where she thought she was going to give this kid to this very stable home, and then even that's like breaking apart. So yeah, I think the film does really well on touching on like specifically those two issues.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that she does, like, look, obviously the couple do split up and then she still ends up raising the child. It's kind of like embracing untraditional families even more. Like Matty's already talked about, like having Juno's part of a family with the dad and a stepmom and a kid between them. Like that's not her complete sister. Then you already have like the idea of an untraditional family by having them adopting a baby in the first place, and then to have the couple not even be together and just be a single mum raising an adoptive child is like an even more different kind of family. So yeah, it's probably another strong aspect on the film. And I think the director Reitman and the writer Cody, I think they just have a gift for kind of seamlessly weaving this kind of comedy with like a somber drama. Like they've done two other films which I've seen where I think this is definitely their best film. But even the other two films which have some flaws, they still kind of have that same kind of balance. The tone is always pitched quite right. Like I just like, it's a very soft, leisurely tone to these films, even though there's a lot of deep subject matter. Like Matty said as well, like the kind of music. I think this is folk music. I'm not an expert on that stuff. I'm pretty sure this is kind of folk music, and that kind of adds to the tone. It's very laid back, and then you have like the hand drawn title sequence, which adds to that as well. And then like other moments where there's a serious tone to the scene, but it's also funny at the same time, and they kind of perfectly balance it, which is like really skilled. Like I think one that stands out is when Belika, after she's had the kid, when Belika comes to the hospital, and it's kind of a funny image of him stood in the doorway in his like athletic gear, his timid frame, he's got no muscle or anything, just standing there in his tight shorts, all of that kind of stuff. It's kind of a funny moment. And then when it's at the same time, it's touching when he gets into the bed and cuddles her, gives her the support that she's been looking for, and then they build their relationship from there. So yeah, it kind of balances that tone really well. Ross, is that something you thought was an impressive part in the film, the way it balances the two tones?
Yeah, it does a great job of that. I think through the dialogue, and it's so well written. As you said, it is kind of like a somber, downbeat tone of the film, and it's got like the soundtrack and like the general aesthetic of everything to kind of suit that. But then the more kind of upbeat, funny dialogue kind of it balances that out more, and especially when you're using quite a serious subject, the comedy does help that. And yeah, and how they've done dialogue so it actually sounds like it's a 16-year-old girl talking as well is really impressive, because a lot of the time you kind of write, I think teenagers are quite, you never really see a well-written teenager that often. They're usually like really moody or like mom or something like that, and they've done a really good job here with both Michael Cera and Elliot Page's characters. But and there's one thing I will say though. I think it's Jason Bateman's character is I don't know. I think if there was a line and the line was nonce. He would be kind of floating below it somewhere. It's he's creeping up there, but I don't think it's quite there yet. But yeah, in general, the film it has really funny dialogue. Like, I really like the bit where Michael Cera is running next to that guy, and the guy's like, "Did you hear Juno McGuff is pregnant?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Did you hear it's yours?" But that kind of thing. It's really funny, and yeah, it's a very funny film.
Yeah, I'm not sure about Jason Bateman, like what he was told to do, like whether he was, because it is a bit weird. Like, obviously, even if she's not like interested in him, in that kind of like, she's definitely like she likes the attention from him. That like you see when she puts the lipstick on to go meet him for the final time. Like obviously she has kind of been interested in him. He's a cool guy. He likes nice music and the movies that she likes. I wasn't sure like what he was looking to gain, like whether he would have pursued the teenage girl in this way. Like yeah, I agree. Like if his hair as well, his hair doesn't help. The way it's like faded down makes him look a bit more like a nonce than he might have otherwise if he had like his hair in like Horrible Bosses or something. So I don't know what he was told to do, because yeah, like when they're dancing, it is a bit. You're like, is this all right? He's like the belly is like right up against him. Yeah, I'm not sure about that character, but I do like. I might kind of talk to her about that those two as a couple and the issues they're having. I like when I like when she comes in, like for the first time they go there and they're playing, Juno and him are playing music in his little thing in the room upstairs. And she comes up and she's like, I don't want to interrupt your jam session or something like that. And it kind of feels like that's basically what their relationship has been, is her interrupting his jam session, because she's kind of been like forced into basically doing what you've, I guess maybe back in the day, not as much now, like you expected to just go, yeah, get into a relationship, get married, have a kid, get a stable job. They try to be a rock star, just get your stable job. And he's doing like, it's literally like peak like capitalism. He's doing like commercial jingles or wherever it is. So I feel like that's kind of like where their relationship is at, and it's kind of doomed to fail because they're not on the same wavelength, really. Like I like Jennifer Garner's kind of annoying, but intentionally annoying, in terms of like she's just so like highly strung and like meticulously planning like each part of their life, reading all like the mummy books and all that kind of stuff. But it's like you feel sympathy for her because you can feel the pain that she has for not being able to have a child naturally, and she desperately wants one. She's obviously they had the issue beforehand when they tried to get a child and it didn't play out, like the mum pulled out or something like that. So I think it worked. That character really works in terms of feeling like her pain and her desperation, especially when she talks to the baby bump. I thought that was a really effective scene because it starts out getting kind of funny. She's kind of like, "Hi, baby." It's a bit like cringy and a bit awkward at first, because it's her getting used to being in that position, and then you read her like true emotions kind of come out. I think, Matty, was that a strength of that relationship, that you saw the issues in the relationship and it played out in a way that kind of made sense. Jason Bateman didn't stick around for no reason. They parted. They went their natural way. She got the kid. He got his chance to go be a rock star, I guess, or do whatever he wanted to do. It kind of played out in a more realistic way, I guess.
Yeah, you can see when Juno first meets Jennifer Garner and Jason Bateman, that Jennifer Garner is like really ready to be a mother, if not too ready. And then she asked Jason Bateman, "Are you ready to be a father?" Then he's like, "Yeah, I'm ready for all the like the soccer match things and the little slices of oranges when they finished the game. Yeah, I'm ready." Like you could just see, he just isn't there with it, almost painfully so that it's kind of a bit obvious. And he's just kind of like, he's almost trapped in this marriage where he gets an own room in his house to keep some of his stuff. Or she lets him have his own room, which is a little bit sad, I think, from the outlook. But he's kind of just doesn't realize he's so deep in it until he meets someone else that also kind of like, through Juno, also has the same kind of like interests and passions that he has, that kind of kickstart the thoughts that I don't really have to just keep giving up all this stuff. I don't know if he kind of like expected to not pursue a relationship with Juno, but just kind of like she reminded him that there were people out there that he'd rather be with than the person his wife had become. Because as you said, that kind of relationship is kind of at the height of capitalism. The house is perfect. Like the photos going up the stairs is kind of like the worst thing I've ever seen, where they're wearing all white and they're all just like, you know, just like not even close to being candidly happy. It's just so staged. So it's definitely a strength of the film, showing something like that kind of relationship that isn't, even though it should be at the peak of what everyone's aiming to be, and it's just so far from what a functional relationship is. And if anything, Juno's family, which has already been like separated and then mismatched from then another marriage after 10 years, and things should be, it should be a more dysfunctional family than Jason Bateman's family, and yet one is so much more loving and caring and stable than the other. So that's just a nice comparison to draw.
I find it fascinating that this film was embraced by both pro-life people and pro-choice people. Like the pro-life people are like, oh, she chose not to have an abortion, so therefore this is a pro-life movie. You shouldn't have abortions. When clear the filmmakers, and definitely Elliot Page, who's been like outspoken like a lot of progressive issues over the years, that they're definitely pro-choice. But like the idea that pro-life people are just because she didn't have an abortion in this film, therefore abortion is bad. It's just baffling that they could think that was the point of the movie. Like it's just, the film makes it clear that there is a choice, but she was just uncomfortable with that particular, as this particular person, this particular woman was uncomfortable with having an abortion. They go to the abortion clinic, they have the choice to do it. She decided, no, I want to have the baby, put it up for adoption. And yeah, she had like the irrational protester outside saying like the baby's got fingernails, that kind of thing, that kind of adds to it as well. It's like this, the kind of, you can be subject to this kind of messaging, like even if you know it's not true, it's like, oh my days, what if the baby does have fingernails and the baby, there's actually a living thing sitting there and I'm gonna kill it. The idea that this is like that means this is a pro-life film, it's just really dumb. Mason, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I didn't consider this film as a pro-life film at all. Like, if that was the case, they wouldn't have had such like a comedic character out the front of the abortion clinic, just like being a mess, basically. That like the film, I almost feel like it's probably kind of joking at pro-life in that sense, to have a character like that out front, just creasing. But then, like you said, this is definitely more of a pro-choice film that just offers an alternative of what you can do. But I really don't think the film even focuses on trying to show either a pro-life or a pro-choice like perspective. I think that's not the focus of the film. The focus of the film is the journey that the character of Juno is going through, not so much her like battle between pro-life and pro-choice. So yeah, it's a bit mad that they're trying to claim this is their film when all she did is just didn't abort the baby. But she's very clear that she didn't want the baby, and at the same time she like mugs off, she makes a comment to the girl outside, like she mugs off the whole like idea that they said like the baby can feel pain or some shit, and she's just like, she like dismisses it. And she always makes jokes about like, Juno makes a joke where she says something like, oh yeah, don't worry, I won't, but if I could give you the baby now I would, but it will look a bit like deformed and something. She's like, it won't be formed, but it has fingernails and stuff like that. Like it's joking over the subject. It's not, yeah, it's definitely not a pro-life film.
Okay, let's get some ratings. Let's start with Matty.
I think this is a little bit of a dark horse, and I think it should be rated a lot higher, just because it kind of tackles things that I don't think many films do or do so well. So I want to give it an 8.6.
Ross?
Yeah, I agree. It's quite unique in the way it's done and how it tackles this kind of subject in such a light that they can make a comedy out of it. It does so well at doing that. And yeah, I'll give it an 8.4.
Mason?
I've had to change my rating because at first I was so stuck in the idea of it being a rom-com. I was like, it fails as a rom-com, but if we're just like disregarding that completely, it's really effective in like portraying the message that it needs to. So I gave it an 8.
As a rom-com, I'll give it a 6. But as a film, I'll give it an 8.5. Moving on to the final film, Notting Hill, in 1999. The life of a simple bookshop owner changes when he meets the most famous film star in the world. Directed by Roger Mitchell and written once again by Richard Curtis. Starring once again, Hugh Grant, Julia Roberts, Rhys Ifans and Hugh Bonneville, as well as some others. No Oscar noms, but it was nominated at the Golden Globes for Best Comedy or Musical Best Actor for Grant and Best Actress for Roberts. And this would be Mason's pick. Hello.
So this is a film I've been wanting to watch for quite a while. I'm pretty sure I had tickets booked to watch it at Cineworld when they do like the old film releases, and then Cineworld closed. So yeah, couldn't watch that there. So that's why it was good that I could choose it for the podcast. I think to me this is probably one of my favorite rom-coms. Like I've seen a decent amount, but this is just so effective as what it is. Like it has the very typical formula of a rom-com, but it really highlights to me what I enjoy from these films. Like, I don't know what it is. There's something about being like these films being based in London and stuff like that. Just feels a lot more romantic. But when you go to London, it's really not romantic like, at all. But for some reason, these films just show it in such a light where you're like, oh my days, like it just feels bare cute. Like I felt myself smiling a lot during this film because of just so many different reasons. Like the scenes when like they first meet, they feel really natural, and then like the first kiss, I think that's really effective as well. But other than just that sort of slight, like the initial romance, I really enjoy the scenes with Hugh Grant's friends, like especially when they first meet. Julia Roberts, it's really sick because they react kind of how we all would if, like, say if Matty brought a celebrity over to like games night or some shit. Like it just works so well because some of them can't handle it, so they start creasing, like they like lose their cool, and then others don't realize who she is, and then they're like, what the fuck? Like, and the scene's like, it's just weird because we're not old enough yet, I don't think, to be able to relate to the characters and, like you said, his like friendship group that much, because I don't think we're not at that age yet. But I feel like we want to relate to them, and that's what's so effective. Like I said, the scenes when they're all together just work. They work really well for me. The balance of romance works well, especially for a rom-com. I think the reveal that she has an American boyfriend is really effective because she's like, you can't come in, my American boyfriend's like, he's here, he flew over yesterday. Like she says it quite casually, and it's quite like, it's a bit cutthroat because you're like, oh shit, like I feel like you feel it with Hugh Grant because you're like, why is she so casual about this? Like she's basically been cheating on him. So I think the journey you go on with Hugh Grant's character, and like I said, for a rom-com, for me, it works really well. There's not much that I dislike about the film, other than Spike. I don't like Spike. And her outbreak of anger, when all the like the paparazzi are outside, like I don't understand it. I can't really relate to it. Like she tries to explain it because, you know, he's a normal person and she's a celebrity, but I still don't really understand it. Like that scene doesn't make sense to me because she has this big outbreak and that ends it with him again. But she went there like as a retreat, and then she's like yeah, that wasn't really effective for me, and I think that's the only negative I have about the film.
This is my favorite Richard Curtis film. I think this is the most consistently funny and sharp script that he's done of all the films. Like just great lines for her, like that were like a little montage when he's having other dates in that period between her leaving, and there's that woman who's a a fruitarian. She's like, yeah, don't eat. It's like that bit where she's like, so you can't eat carrots? Like, these carrots, yeah, have been murdered, yes. Just little details like that. When he's like, all that awaits me at home is a masturbating Welshman. There's just lots of funny lines interwoven throughout this film, and it kind of just plays like a fairy tale, I think. Like even when they first meet, like Mason kind of touched on it, like he thinks it's about to be over, like several times. Like first she like leaves the shop. First her just walking into the shop in the first place, then her leaving the shop is like, okay, that's over. Gets to tell that anecdote at a party that Anna Scott came into my travel bookshop, which is weird. Was that a thing? In the late 90s, you could just have a travel bookshop and be able to make money. I feel like it was a bit weird. But yeah. Then she comes into the flat. It's like, oh, it's another step in the fairy tale. And then she leaves. Then comes back. Then plants that kiss on him, like Mason said. That was like a really magical moment. And then you have the rest of the romance. It's really weird that Alec Baldwin's in this film. Like, I wonder if he was just in London and they needed someone to play the boyfriend, because it's literally that one like 1 minute, 2 minute scene. He just comes out of nowhere. It's like, oh, you're right, mate. Off the top rope, trying to destroy the romance. I feel like he must have just been in London. They're like, oh yeah, calm. He just played this one scene. You're a movie star. Like, yeah. At first I was like, is it actually Alec Baldwin playing himself? Is that what they're gonna do? But no, it's like some other guy. I think his name's James or something. But what I do like about this film is how it's kind of like reflecting on, like Julia Roberts reflecting on her own fame, I guess. Like basically, you kind of touched on it. I don't really with the paparazzi and her being like pissed off about it. Like that kind of feeds into the whole idea of her being frustrated by not having any privacy and having all these issues. I feel like it was just kind of she's just frustrated. It's like a combination of everything that she had to go through in life. And I think what it does get right is like showing all these issues that she has, like she at the dinner table when she lists like the surgery that she's had to have and starving herself to make sure she has a figure that's right for people to look at her and all that kind of stuff. But by putting those issues, like contrasting it against the people with like real issues, the normal people, the poorer people, the less famous people at the table, like her with her disability and him being divorced and all these kind of more regular issues, by contrasting it against that, it doesn't make it feel as like trite as it could have been. If it's like, oh my God, can you believe how hard it is to be famous and rich? Like if you did that in a bad way, it could be really kind of annoying and a bit abrasive. But I think by having it against their issues, it makes it seem more authentic. And you even have Spike who's like, he brings up something about like the kids starving in the South Sudan or something like that. So it's like the idea of like, yeah, everyone's going to have problems. Everyone's more worse off than you somewhere. It doesn't mean you can't have like problems of your own, even if you are a rich, famous movie stars. I thought that's like kind of interesting thing to go about, like an interesting thing to like explore, I guess, in this film. And even William, the Hugh Grant's character, like even he kind of struggles to look beyond her fame by the end, like before you get that iconic quote. Like even he's kind of like, oh, do I really want to be a part of that life? But she tries to like convince him with that quote, like, yeah, I'm also just a girl. I'm not just Anna Scott. I can just be the girl that was there before she was famous. But yeah, Ross, is that something you thought that was interesting about the film? Like trying to explore what it's like to be famous and that you can have your own problems still, even if you've got money and fame?
Yeah, and what I liked about that is in that scene, dinner table scene, they all kind of say their problems and whatnot, and then she kind of hasn't really said much for the whole meal. And she's like, "What about me?" And they're all like, "What?" They're all kind of bemused by the fact that she even like has anything to say. And she lists all the stuff, and they're all just like silent for like 10 seconds. And it's quite interesting how they put it in like that. And it does kind of shine a light on how these movie stars, you kind of get starstruck when you meet them and whatnot, but they're just people, they're real people, and it shines a good light on that, I think, as well at the same time. And yeah, I like how even like Hugh Grant, his character, he's so like awkward and bumbly at first with her, and it's quite awkward, the dialogue between the two of them, and the film gradually builds up their relationship, and it gradually becomes less awkward between the two characters until you actually like their relationship. But no, I would agree with what Mason said though, where she does like that scene when she opens the door and she has a massive go at him. It does throw you off a bit, that kind of relatability that her character is trying to get across. That kind of does throw you off a bit, that she gets so annoyed at that kind of thing. But those are her problems, and yeah. But what I would say is that Spike is a great character, and I think he's really funny. And he says, it's like when she's upstairs in bed, and he's like, "Do you mind if I have a go?" That kind of thing. And then he goes out to he comes in, he's like, "Good choice of briefs, nice firm buttocks," that kind of stuff. He says some really funny stuff. And I like how even like with Spike's character, he gets a bit of depth to him. Like when Hugh Grant's sister says, "I'm gonna get engaged to someone," she just turns to him and like, "It's you, by the way." He looks so happy, and there's like depth to all these friends have something to them that makes you actually like them rather than just being the friends, which I like.
Yeah, I find Spike funny. Don't know what Mason's on about. It's a bit peak, you know. Like even at the start when he's the whole thing with the answer phone and not taking his messages, he's like, "Well, sorry if we're going to be that kind of serious roommates who take everyone's messages," kind of sarcastically like that. Like all that whole interactions are pretty funny, and I thought he was entertaining throughout when he dropped in. But yeah, again with that scene with the paparazzi, like, I thought it was upsetting because she's kind of like in this like blissful state with William in this flat. She thinks she's like away from it all, and they're just chilling, they're eating ice cream, reading, talking about the movie business, and then like they get interrupted by the most you have the most soundproof door of all time in that apartment, where it's literally you can't hear a single thing, and then there's hundreds and hundreds of photographers going off on the other side of the door. But yeah, I don't mind that scene. But yeah, with Julia Roberts, like she just has like a pretty indescribable quality in this film, and kind of in a lot of films as well. Like she's not really saying anything. Like even when she first comes, when she comes to the flat, and she keeps saying no, and he's like, "Is that what you can say?" No, and she's like, "No." But like she's not saying anything in that scene. She's not really doing that much with her face, but it still feels like she's like so in control. Like I feel like, oh yeah, she is this movie star that's just that would completely leave you starstruck. I think the direction like kind of helps that as well, because of the way it shoots her when she comes down the stairs. It feels like a grand moment, like she's something. She's a higher being. So I think yeah, her performance is kind of key to this whole story working. Matty, do you think that was a crucial element of the story, that the performance by Julia Roberts?
I think definitely a whole part of this film is kind of like showing there can be differences between status in a relationship, and that obviously can cause kind of like the strain, obviously that Hugh Grant is struggling with. A lot of the film are just like the vast insecurities that obviously she can do whatever she wants, whenever she wants, and like her temper might be kind of attributable to the point she makes like 15 million every time she does a project, you know, and that there aren't going to be many people that are going to tell her what she doesn't want to hear. So that's an interesting dynamic they don't usually see in most rom-coms, which is nice. But I think my main highlight of the film is Spike. He's just kind of just perfect throughout. And they should kind of pick the kind of most disgusting looking. He just looks like he smells. Man with just such an odd body. And it's just a nice touch that he's Welsh. And he just turns up and he just steals the scene every time. Like saying, I've got a story that will shrink your testicles to the size of a raisin, the size of raisins. He's just completely oblivious to her being there. Or when she's in the bath, he walks in and I think he thinks he's hallucinating, so he goes back out, comes back in again, and then realizes she's still there again, and he's just as shocked the second time as he is the first time. But yeah, he definitely wins it for me. I think also Dylan Moran as well. I've only seen him in Black Book, the one who tries to shove a book down his trousers, and says there's no book down one of my trousers. He's known for playing kind of like sleazy, always looks kind of drunk, kind of sweaty, probably on drugs kind of character. So just the fact that he just had like a 1 minute scene, I enjoyed that, because I've only ever seen him play the exact same character in Black Books, and perhaps because Black Books is based in a bookstore, that's maybe the shout out to the character. I've just kind of figured that out now in my head. Yeah. I think another point of this film, which I like, is that it's just ordinary looking people that are his friends. It's just nice to see, because I think you watch too many like American or Netflix programs or series nowadays, and everyone looks like a catalogue model. And they're just not really relatable people. They all look the bloody same because they're all just like perfect and symmetrical and everything. And then a lot of the characters on this cast are kind of a little bit ugly. They're not very perfect, but they're them in their own way. Obviously, apart from Julia Roberts and Hugh Grant, but they're real people, and they do have their own emotions, and they do have their own attraction beyond looking like a model, which is nice, because that's kind of like what life is made of. And yeah, I think I don't have too much else to say about this film. Yeah, those are just the things that stood out for me.
I do like movies that are about making movies as well. It's kind of a special interest of mine, and like the comedy you get from her having to do some of the ridiculous like action movie dialogue, like when she's reading, practicing her lines, and even the titles of these action movies, because it must feel quite ridiculous to be one of those people when you pick up like the Michael Bay script and you see the stuff you got, but it's like, and when you're like an FBI agent stopping a nuclear missile from touching America or something like some ridiculous. When you're actually reading the lines at home, you must feel a bit dumb. but then you see the 15 million drop into your bank account, and you're like, yeah, calm, safe, I'll do this till I'm dead. And they even discussing like real details about like the movie business, like the nudity clause, which is like an actual thing that goes on. And it's like, yeah, Mel Gibson, he does his own arse work. It's funny, clever lines like that, which were added to the interest for me in this film. And I also like situational comedy. And my favorite rom-coms are where it's like where the central idea is based on something completely ridiculous, whether it's like in like Why You Were Sleeping, where she's pretending to be engaged to a guy who's unconscious when they've never actually met. Like I like a ridiculous premise at the center of a rom-com. And this is not really ridiculous, kind of ridiculous in terms of a movie star getting out of a bookshop owner. Not really though, but the bit with the horse and hound press event where he rocks up there thinking he's going to see her, and then he turns out it's like this media junket. He's got to go around and he interviews her. You think that's like funny enough. You're expecting him to just walk out after that, it's done. Then it's like, oh no, you can see the rest of the actors now. He's kind of got to sit down and work his way through this. And I particularly like the one with the translator, where it's like, oh, so did you see yourself in this character? And he goes through the translation. I think it was like, it's like a psychopathic flesh-eating zombie or something like that. So I don't see myself in that character particularly. So but all that comedy works really well. But it's interesting that this film goes past 2 hours. I feel like the rom-com rules, it's like, yeah, it should be about the hour 40 mark. And you've got to kind of earn the right to go beyond that. And I think this is it's a bit more languid in the way it's paced. Like, it's not a typical rom-com. It's not like up and go. Like Bridget Jones is a bit more vibrant and fast in that sense, where this is like more like keen to like take its time, explore the romance. So it goes past the 2 hour mark. But I don't think it earns it. Like, I don't think it drags at any point for me. And even because by the first time I watched it was a few months ago, and I didn't like the press conference scene. Watching it this time, I was much more into it. I don't know what it was about the first time I saw it, but even this time, even when you get to the press conference scene by the end, I'm still completely on board 2 hours into the film. But Mason, do you think the length or the pacing could be an issue?
Now, honestly, when you said it was 2 hours, I had to quick double check on IMDb because it doesn't feel long when you're watching it. I didn't think it was like considerably longer than the others, where I feel like Juno is like an hour, like 35 or something, and I feel like Bridget Jones must be like an hour and a half or something as well. So considering this film's like got an extra half hour on top of it, I didn't notice it at all because the pacing doesn't feel slow. It feels like it's at a natural speed, because like you could probably get rid of certain scenes, I don't know, where she meets all of his friends, or when the scene near the end where he's talking to his friends about how, like, has he made the right choice, has he made the wrong choice, or even, I don't know, like the car driving scene. Like you could get rid of those, but you don't want to, because like you said, all of those scenes together add up to making this such a good film and making it such a standout rom-com. So for me, like you said, it is a bit strange actually, like looking at how long the film is, because typically, they're nowhere near as long as this, because they're normally like short, quick stories, and there's not much development, because rom-coms are just pretty standard. There's like a formula that you just follow, but this one follows it, but just seems like to be at a higher kind of like spec. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to like run through the film in my head and what I'd get rid of, but there's genuinely nothing. Like every scene, like even that scene where they hop over the fence into that little garden. I think that's maybe when they have like their second kiss or something. Scenes like that, like I'm trying and justify in my head, like, yeah, that's pointless, but it's not, because it all just adds up so well. Yeah, no, there's nothing I'd remove, and I think the pacing's fine.
Mason mentioned the idea of it being like a fantastical version of London, a more romantic version. So like kind of a bit tense that they kind of removed all the black and brown people, of which there are many in Notting Hill. And that was their version of a fantastical romantic version of London. Bit tense, but different time. I mean, if they did this film now, Notting Hill would be more reflective of what Notting Hill actually is like. Okay, let's get some ratings. I'll start with Mason.
For me, it's probably one of my favourite rom-coms, and I've only seen it for the first time today. So I gave it an 8.1.
Matty?
It didn't quite slap as much for me. Definitely better than Bridget Jones, so I gave it a 7.5.
Ross?
Maybe we should knock it down the score for portraying Notting Hill as a middle-class white area. But no, I'm joking. I'll give it 7.9.
I'm not joking. A 5. No, I'm joking. I really like this film, and I liked it even more the second time around. I give it an 8. Okay, let's head over to Ross's corner of the Zoom, and he can deliver his ratings roundup.
So this week in third place we have we don't. We have Bridget Jones' Diary with a 7.2. In second place we have Notting Hill with a 7.9 overall, and way far at the top we had Juno with an 8.4 overall. In terms of the overall rankings, that put Bridget Jones' Diary at 76th, sitting between The Breakfast Club and Moon. Notting Hill at 53rd, but on par with I, Tonya and Unforgiven. And then Juno way up in 14th, on par with Grave of the Fireflies and Alien.
That is interesting. Okay. Our actor of the week. Let's go to Mason.
I'm going to go for Julia Roberts in Notting Hill. I think she doesn't have to do a lot, but she really embodies that sort of. She like emits this like famous aura about her performance, and I feel like you can really buy into what she's trying to portray. Yeah, so her.
Matty.
I would like to give it to J.K. Simmons because I love the dude. And yeah, I'm just going to bypass all the other actors and actresses.
Ross.
I'm gonna go for Renee Zellweger. I think she's created such an iconic character that like a lot of people still relate with to this day. And for an American to play a British woman as well, and pull the accent off so well, and pull like the way they act so well as well, is she's done a pretty good job. Renee Zellweger.
I'm going to go for Elliot Page because I think he delivered one of the more unique performances in. Or we're saying it's not rom-com, but in like coming of age film, a teen film, I thought he created an iconic character that's different to a lot of the type of characters you get in these type of films. So yeah, I thought it was a really strong performance there. The unique category, the most touching moment. May.
I wouldn't say it was particularly touching, but I feel like on paper it's like classically what it would be, what a touching moment you would think would be. I would say it'd be from Notting Hill, and it'd be the press scene when Hugh Grant kind of unlocks his final form of bumbling, polite British heartthrob, and then just about manages to get out the words to say, or to ask if she'll give him another chance. Yeah, I'd probably say that. Yeah.
Ross, if you've stopped crying.
Sorry, this is my moment so heartwarming. I can't say it. No, my most heartwarming moment, I think, comes from Juno, and I think that whole sequence of like Michael Cera finishing the race, and the voiceover saying he knew where she was, and he ran straight there, and both of them lying on the bed. And then there's a voiceover that says neither of them wanted to see the baby because it always felt like hers. And then the camera just pans around from the baby room onto Jennifer Garner, and then she's holding the baby. And then the stepmom says she looks like a new mum scared shitless. And I think that whole sequence is very, very touching. So, yeah, I went for that.
Mason?
Mine was the scene in Notting Hill where they try and claim like the last brownie, where they have to say who has the shittest life. I think just hearing all these people just like deep themselves and sort of like just admit what they think is bad about their own life is quite deep. And then especially it's even more hard hitting when you hear that the girl in a wheelchair and her husband, they can't have kids. That kind of comes out of nowhere because at first it's like everyone's having their own issues. And it's, he's like, I'm shit at my job. I don't get any promotions. And then she just like slaps down this like mad information. Yeah, I think it's it's quite hard hitting. Yeah, like I felt very like taken back when that bit happened. So yeah.
In the vein of not being able to have kids, I went for Jennifer Garner speaking to the baby bump, as I kind of mentioned earlier. I thought that was really really touching moment. This must be difficult to be in that situation where you feel like you're destined to be something and you literally can't in terms of how I wanted to be a mum. So yeah, that That was a nice moment. I wish this was a Pop Vinyl Award, Ross.
I thought this one was really funny. Spike, when he's wearing that shirt that says "You're the most beautiful woman in the world," and on the back it says "Fancy or fuck." I just thought it was really funny, so I thought I'd go for that.
Yeah, Spike's got a few outfits, but I went for Juno. Nice big belly. Big belly. She's got a funny outfit. Suits her character as well, very rambunctious and let's go do this. Let's have a baby. So yeah, Juno. At Liam Wayne 98. Credits in my podcast.wordpress.com, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Podbean. Next week, do we have next fortnight? Do we even have what the film? I don't even know what the theme is.
Christmas.
Yeah, our favourite Christmas film.
Oh, what are the films?
I'm doing Love Actually.
I'm doing the Polar Express.
I'm doing Elf, but that's probably changing. I don't know.
No, don't change it. I love it.
You've said it. It can't change.
Fuck's sake.
At least you actually picked a film that's actually part of the.
Yeah, I'm doing bar mitzvah films
In Bruges.
Christmas.
He picks, I don't know, Shrek the Third or something. I don't know.
Yeah, my Christmas film is Eat, Pray, Love.
Oh, Matt, make a controversial pick. Die Hard.
That is a Christmas film, so I don't know. What
Silence of the Lambs. Go well.
No, cheers. Well,
Cheers.
Yeah.
no, it is. Yeah, cheers.